This is World News coming to you live from Algiers with me, Maryam Zian, with the latest from around the globe. Coming up right now, the headlines. Dozens of Palestinians killed and injured in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. Occupation commits a massacre in Khan Yunis. Warnings that over 2 million Palestinians face the threat of death by starvation as Abu Ubaidah says Al-Qassam fighters continue heroic operations. Also coming up next, heavy shelling by rapid support forces on Nile River State leaves at least 11 dead, 5 more killed in separate attacks on neighborhood in Al-Fashir. Al-Burhan affirms the army's ongoing battles against the RSF. Next, Putin meets with Trump's envoy again. Meanwhile, Zelensky calls for a comprehensive ceasefire as the first step toward ending the war. And anticipation builds ahead of new round of nuclear negotiations in Muscat. File at the center of trilateral talks between China, Russia, and Iran. Trump says talks are going well and expresses openness to meeting Iranian leaders. Hello and welcome again to your nightly news. First, at least 19 Palestinians were martyred on Friday in a new massacre by the Israeli occupation in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. Local sources reported that Israeli warplanes bombed 2 homes belonging to the Sharab and Al Amour families, causing numerous casualties. Early Friday, the occupation also resumed its bombardment of displaced people in Al Mawasi area west of Khan Yunis, where a drone strike targeted a tent and killed 5 members of one family: the father, his pregnant wife, and their 3 children. These attacks followed a bloody day of massacres in Jabalia and Gaza City. And the death toll in the Gaza Strip has risen to 38 since Friday morning due to continued Israeli bombardment across their territory, according to medical sources. These attacks, or the attacks which included strikes on homes and displacement tents, have killed men, women, and children and wounded many others. Gaza Civil Defense reported that the Israeli occupation is targeting all aspects of life in the Strip with intensified bombardment on displaced persons camps described as part of an ongoing genocide. And Gaza's government media office has issued a stark warning saying that more than 2.4 million people are now facing starvation. In a statement released Friday, the office reported that 1 million children are at the epicenter of this worsening crisis as famine becomes a grim of reality. So far, 52 people, including 50 children, have died due to hunger and malnutrition.
Famine has become a reality, with 52 deaths due to hunger and malnutrition, including 50 children, and more than 2.4 million people in the Strip facing the risk of starvation.
The military spokesperson for the Al-Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, Abu Ubaidah, said that Qassam fighters continue to wage heroic battles, carry out well-planned ambushes, and lie in wait for enemy forces to strike them with deadly precision at the time, place, and method of their choosing, as they put it. Abu Ubaidah praised the bravery of Qassam fighters on the battlefield from Beit Hanun to Rafah, describing their actions as a source of pride, a military miracle, and a testament for the youth and forces of the entire nation. He affirmed the readiness of Qassam fighters in combat strongholds and defensive ambushes to continue the confrontation until victory or martyrdom. The Palestinian resistance intensifies its operations, launching bold ambushes that rattle Zionist forces and challenge the narrative of an imminent collapse, all while the genocide in Gaza continues. Hossam Barkan has more.
Death ambushes, as the resistance calls them, return once again, shaking the confidence of the occupation leaders. From beneath the ground and out of the ashes, resistance fighters emerge to carry out daring, close-range revenge operations, striking Zionist forces with deadly precision and retreating back into the tunnels. Beit Hanun, Khan Yunis, and Jabalia bear witness to these high-level operations where tunnels, homes, and anti-armor weapons were used effectively. These bold attacks took place in buffer zones under occupation control, clearly providing the resistance ability to operate behind enemy lines. The footage hides many details of masterful planning and powerful execution that reveals the resistance command over the battlefield, especially after tracking the movements of the Zionist forces, which helped ensure successful ambushes. More than just military feats, the resistance has also repositioned itself on the battlefield nearly a month into the conflict, exposing the false claims of the occupation regarding its imminent collapse. Politically, the message is clear: no retreat, no surrender, and no handing over of arms, despite the conditions by the Zionists, its allies, and those echoing its narrative as a condition to halt the genocide war in Gaza.
And in Sudan, heavy artillery shelling by the Rapid Support Forces resulted in the deaths of at least 11 civilians, including women, children, and the elderly, in a camp for displaced persons in Al-Muqran, Nile River State. Dozens of others were wounded and taken to hospital in Atbara. Meanwhile, in Al-Fasher, North Darfur, 5 civilians, including a child and his mother, were killed and 17 injured in RSF shelling using over 60 heavy mortar and howitzer rounds, according to the Army's 6th Infantry Division. The head of Sudan's Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, said the army is continuing its efforts to expel the Rapid Support Forces. In a public address during his visit to several areas in Sinar State and the southern city of El Dindar to assess the conditions of Sudanese citizens, al-Burhan stated that no one can impose their agenda on the Sudanese people, adding that the country will prevail over the Rapid Support Forces. And still in Sudan, the government, through its permanent representative to the UN in Vienna, urged increased international pressure on the RSF to end the humanitarian crisis, facilitate the return of displaced people, and support reconstruction in liberated areas. The UN World Food Programme warned on Friday that a funding shortfall may force it to scale back assistance in Sudan starting in May. The agency is seeking $698 million to help 7 million Sudanese between May and September. In other news, Russia's defense ministry reported that its air defense systems shot down 79 Ukrainian drones overnight, including 59 over Crimea, 11 over the Black Sea, and 4 others over Belgorod. And Russian President Vladimir Putin met Friday with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, who is visiting Moscow in an effort to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. A video released by the Kremlin showed the meeting between Witkoff and Putin, who was accompanied by his foreign policy advisor Yuri Yushakov and special envoy for investment affairs Kirill Dmitriev.
Steve Witkoff was received in the Kremlin by Russian President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. A 3-hour conversation took place, which was constructive and very useful. This conversation allowed for further rapprochement between the positions of Russia and the US, not only on Ukraine, but also on a number of other international issues.
And And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the US and Russia are moving in the right direction toward ending the war in Ukraine, provided that there is an agreement on specific points in the negotiations. In an interview with the American channel CBS News, Lavrov said that his country is in communication with the American side and that there are many indications that they're moving in the right direction.
Well, the President of the United States believes, and I think rightly so, that we are moving in the right direction. The statement by the President mentions a deal, and we are ready to reach a deal, but there are still some specific points, elements of this deal which need to be fine-tuned, and we are busy with this exact process. And the President of the United States did not spell out the elements of the deal, so it is not appropriate for me to do this.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stressed the need for a full, unconditional halt to attacks, accusing Russia of rejecting a US-led peace initiative from Jeddah meeting in March. He urged Washington to take a clearer stance in holding Moscow accountable for the war. And Oman takes center stage this weekend as it hosts a pivotal third round of indirect talks between Iran and the US, a high-stakes diplomatic push closely watched by the international community amid rising tensions over Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Usama Ayadi tells you more.
Tehran and Washington returned to the negotiating table in the Sultanate of Oman. This is the third round of indirect talks following meetings in Rome and Oman that were described as positive and constructive, but they remain governed by mutual conditions. Iran seeks to lift sanctions, and the United States insists on eliminating the nuclear program of any military dimensions.
If the Americans accept the framework and red lines that the Supreme Leader has stated, we are ready for any cooperation. And if they do not accept, then naturally we will not be subjected to humiliation and defeat.
For the first time, the talks go beyond the traditional political framework to delicate technical aspects as technical experts from both sides join the negotiating table. A phase where signs of a compromise may be looming on the horizon is evident in U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's announcement of the Trump administration's willingness to allow Iran to pursue a civilian nuclear program, provided it relies exclusively on imported fuel.
But I think we're doing very well with respect to Iran, and we're having very serious meetings. And there are only two options. And the one option is not a good option. It's not a good option at all. And I think we're doing very well on an agreement with Iran. But that one, we're doing a lot of things, I will say. But that one is well on its way. We could have a very, very good decision, and a lot of lives will be saved.
On the other hand, realism and good faith remain two words frequently repeated by Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai in a veiled message to Washington that Tehran is still putting the ball in America's court and refusing to compromise its red lines. Between Iran's escalating nuclear ambitions and stifling U.S. sanctions, the third round of nuclear talks is treading water, attempting to weave the threads of a settlement that would prevent the region from sliding into an escalation looming on the horizon with mutual military threats.
According to China's Xinhua news agency, representatives of China, Russia, and Iran met with IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi to discuss the Iranian nuclear program. The talks followed Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi's visit to Beijing, focused on the agency's role in facilitating a political and diplomatic resolution. U.S. President Donald Trump said he is open to meeting with Iran's supreme leader or president amid ongoing nuclear discussions, responding to a question from the Time magazine. The United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, is calling for greater support for a political transition in the country. Speaking at a UN Security Council session, Pedersen said the situation in Syria remains fragile, with major challenges still facing the political process despite recent developments on the ground. He pointed to the presence of Syrian Foreign Minister Assad or Saad al-Shibani the meeting as a sign of what he called important progress made in recent months.
That political transition is now at a critical juncture. The legal vacuum that existed before the Constitutional Declaration was issued has been partly filled by it. Syria has moved beyond a caretaker government to a new, expanded and more diverse cabinet. This is indeed an improvement from what went before. Yet it is still not fully inclusive framework for a political transition.
And at the United Nations Security Council, the A3+ group affirmed that lasting peace and stability in Syria can only be achieved through an inclusive political process that leaves no group behind. Speaking on behalf of Algeria, Somalia, and Sierra Leone and Guyana, Algerian Ambassador Ammar bin Jama emphasized the need to involve all stakeholders in Syria's political process. He also welcomed the ongoing dialogue between Syrian authorities and various segments of the Syrian society.
Syria stands at a pivotal moment in its history. Having endured profound hardship, its people now look to the future with hope and cautious optimism. This hope must be nurtured through sustained international support and cooperation. They envision a brighter Syria, built by and for all Syrians, where no one is marginalized. The A3+ firmly believes that a successful and inclusive transition must be Syrian-led and Syrian-owned, with the strong backing of the international community.
And speaking on behalf of the A3+ group, Algeria's UN ambassador to the UN, Ammar bin Jama, called for full respect of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He stressed the need for the immediate and complete withdrawal of all occupying forces from Syrian territory under their control.
The A3+ remains seriously concerned about Israel's repeated attacks and violations of Syria's sovereignty. The A3+ strongly condemns this military operation that violate international law, including the United Nations charters, and we call for full compliance with the 1974 disengagement agreement. Moreover, we urge an immediate end to Israeli incursions into Syrian territories and a complete withdrawal of its forces. The Golan Heights remains Syrian under international law.
American warplanes resumed airstrikes on Yemen's Hudaida and Sana'a provinces on Friday for a second consecutive month. The Houthi media office reported that U.S. strikes targeted Qamaran Island and the Salif district, northwest of Hudaida. In the same context, and according to U.S. officials cited by AP, the Houthis have downed 7 U.S. MQ-9 drones worth $200 million since early May, 3 of them in the past week alone. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboun's recent inauguration of projects in Bashar accelerates the rollout of the Garage Billet project, a strategic move towards achieving self-sufficiency in iron production and boosting exports. Marwa Belaiwar has more.
In a significant step for Algeria's industrial future, President Abdelmajid Tebboune has launched key projects in Bashar, the country's southwest. This marks an important milestone in the full realization of the Garage Bilad project, which is central to Algeria's goal of self-sufficiency in iron production and boosting exports.
هو حلم بدأ يتحقق ولا واحد كان يظن أن يوم من الأيام يكون فيه قطار في العبادلة ومحطة قطار في العبادلة ولا حماقير ولا في إن شاء الله بالتوفيق وإن شاء الله من خلال هذا المشروع نكون ربحت أداة اللي تسمح لنا باش المشاريع هذه نقوم بها مستقبلا بنفسنا مساعدة الدول الصديقة معليش ولكن تكون عندنا طاقات ذاتية لإنجاز مثل هذه المشاريع تاع السكة الحديدية 1000 كيلومتر فما فوق.
The Garage Bilad iron mine, one of the largest reserves in the world, holds estimated deposits of 3.5 billion tons of iron ore. With full exploitation, it is expected to produce between 40 to 50 million tons of iron annually. To support this, a new iron processing plant is being built in Tindouf alongside a massive steel production complex in the Tumyat region of Bashar. President Tebboune laid the foundation for this ambitious steel plant set to be operational by 2026 with an investment of $1 billion. The project also includes a vital railway line linking Garage Bilad to Bashar and Tindouf, stretching over 950 kilometers. This infrastructure will ensure the efficient transport of raw iron to the processing plants and ports, positioning Algeria as a key player in the global iron and steel market. The Garage Bilad project is poised to transform Algeria's mining and industrial sectors, creating jobs and reinforcing its position as a regional economic powerhouse.
Moving on to other news, 60 world leaders are set to attend the funeral of Pope Francis on Saturday at St. Peter's Square in Rome, where he will be buried at Santa Maria Maggiore. In line with his wishes, the ceremony will be simple and modest. The Vatican declared 9 days of mourning with daily ceremonies to continue through May the 5th. Algerian Minister of State Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmad Attaf, arrived in Rome on Friday to represent Algeria at Pope Francis's funeral per President Abdelmajid Tebboune's instruction. The Foreign Ministry emphasized the strong and historic ties between Algeria and the Vatican, founded in 1972, and reinforced by shared values of dialogue and mutual respect. Minister Attaf also signed the condolence book the Vatican Embassy in Algiers on behalf of the Algerian government following Pope Francis's passing. Now to some cultural news. Algeria's National Committee for Cultural Properties has approved the inclusion of the Saura Cultural Park in National Heritage lists, recognizing its rich natural and cultural value. During the screening of the documentary Saura, a Natural and Cultural Treasure, Culture Minister Zohir Bello highlighted the importance of cultural parks, now covering over 51% of Algeria's heritage, enriched by its natural and wildlife diversity.
Today, as I said, is a day truly dedicated to heritage. In celebration of Heritage Month, the National Committee for Cultural Heritage has officially classified the Gouraya Park a cherished region. With this, Algeria's network of cultural parks continues to expand, now covering more than 51% of the national territory. This clearly shows that all of Algeria is heritage, culture, archaeology, and human civilization. Algeria is indeed a cradle of civilization.
And for his part, Radwan Tahri, director of the documentary Saura, Natural and Cultural Treasure, stressed that the classification of the Saura Park is a significant step, especially as his film serves as a travel ticket for viewers to experience the region's rich history and heritage. Let's take a listen.
Today, it is a significant step taken by the Ministry of Culture to officially declare that the Saura region is a cultural hub. This is something I've been calling for in my documentaries for a long time, to recognize the value and protected status of this region. Through these films, I've tried to showcase the natural treasures of the Saura, and now, this particular film also highlights its archaeological wealth. These documentaries serve as a time travel ticket for the viewer, allowing them to experience the Saura as it was millions of years ago, all the way through to historical times.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks for watching and have a great night.